I welcome everyone to our first Ask the Artist conversation with Amjum Rizve. And my name is Sibdas Sengupta, and I'll be moderating today's um, session with Amjum. And you can ask questions. You can share your questions, thoughts in the chat box, and I can ask the question to Amjum from there. Uh, Before I start the conversation with Amjum, I would also like to start that this Q&A session, the way we have imagined and aimed is that to kind of forge new conversations through which we can engage with the artist and understand one's artistic practice much more in detailed manner, and how these conversations also kind of help us to build new understandings to understand one's practice as well. Uh, by saying this, I also request everyone to kind of share your questions if you have for Amjum, for his practice, comments, thoughts, critique as well, which Amjum will be responding. Um, yeah, so Amjum, hi. Thank you for your time and um, accepting this invite to be the first um, artist with whom we would like to kind of start this program of ours. Uh, Before saying this, before we start the conversation, I also uh, would like to begin with that. Um, I know your practice, and I know you from last 5 years, right? And I've seen your practice that how it has developed over the period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And we have done exhibitions together. We have had multiple conversations together, and it has led always to this kind of productive space where we examined and critically tried to understand what practice can do to our times as well. So with
Yeah.
with that kind of relationship which I have with you, I also have seen that how your practice also has developed and evolved, right? In these last 5 years. That from when we did our first conversation, I don't know whether you remember that or not because we had so many in between. But then when I see and when I look back, there is a big difference in between, right?
Yeah.
So if you could navigate us to understand, or perhaps to understand your practice a little better in a way uh,
Yeah.
to get an understanding of how this, shifts also happened in your own journey, in your own inquiries as well. Over to you, Amjum.
Yeah. And first of all, thank you, Sibdas and Gallery Dotwalk to like this kind of talk and waiting for me. So yeah. So Sibdas, each other we talked a lot about our process and what's going around me last 5 years. So in the case of last early years, maybe I think this is a wide after entering a professional art space. So this is a wide space for me. So it's a duty for me to extract my whole process and thoughts to the people what which I'm doing. So it's so important years for me. So well, yeah, I tried a little more multidisciplinary artistic process throughout these last 5 years using different kinds of materials, different kinds of shows. So it's important for me to understand myself and as an artist too, Sibdas.
Right. But also, could you please talk a little about your practice to give a background to our audiences?
Sure.
Perhaps we can start taking questions
Yeah.
from there, and maybe we can have a very open conversation from there also.
Yeah.
That, if
No,
someone
basically,
doesn't know about what your practice is, yeah, sorry.
yeah. Basically, I trained as a painter. In my early works, I did paintings more actually. So there is a little bit shift in present 2 3 years using different kinds of materials. That's why I'm just thinking about what I'm going to do in my future also. So um, there is a lot of I already mentioned that using the materials which I'm using. So it's hard. Maybe I think you can ask the question. Maybe that's interesting to talk more for me
Right.
actually.
So yeah, I mean, maybe one question which I would like to start with is
Mm.
that how, because in these years also you have materially engaged with diverse approaches.
Yeah.
I have seen your sculptures, I have seen your mixed media works, I've also seen your paintings as well, you know.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
perhaps earlier, if I see that you started from a very painterly discipline or
Mm.
a painterly approach you started with in your practice. And then
Mm.
with these kind of multiple engagements you have been doing in these last few years, you have also arrived to a point where you are engaging with different concepts, materials, and disciplinarities in multiple ways, right?
Yeah.
So that is something which is also very promising and interesting to me to look at.
Mm. Mm. Yeah. Definitely. That's you know. From my childhood, I am very fascinated about to enter the professional art space. So that's a decision for me till there. So in recent works, I am just taking to interpret different kinds of subjective things and very technical things to explore my own artistic view to uh, to the people. So you know uh, for me as an artist, it's it's I can do only the process, this kind of process, very beautifully in my life. That's the core, and that's the intention for me to understand myself. That's why I'm just producing over and over the works. So through that only I can tackle myself or tackle my situations to overcome over and over.
Right. Absolutely. Which also kind of takes me to my next question to you, because I mean, we have discussed it many a times that
Yeah.
everyone has seen your beads words, right? But I'm
Yeah.
always fascinated with a question that who trained as a painter, where this person has introduced himself or getting to know that this person wants to work with this material, the beads, you
Yeah.
know, the beads which became a very important identity at this moment, I can say to you.
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
what do you have to say about that?
Yeah.
From when,
And I think
what, and
now,
why it made you to start working with this?
now I think I can open up. uh, yeah, it's very recently the people are asking about same question again and again, because it's the word beats come from my comes to my life because my survival uh, problem. Before entering the post graduation academic system, I worked as a wedding dress designer 2 3 years. Why? Because my aunt is a tailor. So we got a project 6 years back. They have a very low budget, and they want to make a rich in visual. So it's hard to go some kind of embroidery or some kind of that kind of techniques, because it's little bit costly. So I made a decision. I made an idea to make beads. You want to stick beads on the cloth, but this is a temporary. You can use only one day. You can't wash it. So that kind of idea will come. So after that only enter the academic system, for my post graduation. I moved to post graduation period. So in there, there is a wide collection of Islamic and Persian art books in Kawa College Library. So I spend most of my time to um, what to read or to engage with that library. So in my earlier period, in my childhood, I spent most of the time in that kind of atmosphere, like there's some kind of mosque and dargahs, like that. So after that, I started to again. I started to make visuals in my study purpose. So I just, through my visuals, I identify that I take that the same process to my canvas also. So that's the core of why the beats came. So it's a little bit interesting for me. Why? Because it's very close to my visuals, what I want to produce. So it's very close to that tradition, very close to that materiality and all. So that's the core of where I started to use the beats. Gradually it comes out very particular format. That's happened actually, Sibdas.
Right. Ah, this is beautiful. But I also, I mean, I really love the fact that the way it was there always, but then you kind of realized it somewhere where it can
Mm-hmm.
be part of your practice, right? And then
Mm-hmm.
from engaging with in a very different manner, how it translated into something else, right?
Uh, yeah, definitely.
So what about?
Um,
Yeah, sorry, you were saying something.
yeah, I think it's in an early period also, earlier works also. I'm using different kinds of materials, not only beads. I'm using 3D liners. I'm using some kind of textile things. That time also I'm trying to study all those things, crafty things, and I'm making collages. So it all helps for me to understand some kind of materiality. So it's important for my process. I always like to be part of that kind of process always.
Right, right, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, of course. Right. It's just to kind of add to the question again from the beads. If I
Mm-hmm.
come to a question of how do you really engage with, this
Mm-hmm.
idea of narrativity in your work as
Mm-hmm.
well. Also, storytelling as an important
Yeah,
artistic strategy to
yeah,
engage with, which is very much
yeah,
kind of there. I'm just talking overarchingly that what your practice is
yeah,
really mean to me, or one, if I say for the first time, if I see your work, then I guess these are the things which I kind of get triggered about. That this person is talking
uh,
about this, and
uh,
these are the things this person is really trying to communicate with, right? So for
uh.
me, I also get fascinated. What are these modes of storytelling? What are these modes of narrativity which you are interested in? You, how do you tell stories? There is definitely a method to it, and you are
Yeah.
very much aware of that method. That what you want to say, what you want to show. Do you have anything to say
You
about
know,
that?
it's not comes from it's very recently. It's come from my childhood. It's come from actually 20 years back. I am a verbally good storyteller as a part of a religious study and all. You know, 10 to 15 years. I'm good at verbal storytelling since my childhood. So it's as an it's coming out recently as an artist. It's coming out through visuals. That's the thing. I think that's the core of about the storytelling. And I'm very fascinated, I'm very interested in artists, like storytelling artists, you know So in that, then in Islamic or Persian tradition, there is a different kinds of a way to storytelling, like song with storytelling, speech with storytelling. So different. I practice all those things in my childhood. Gradually I entered to the art school. It's a little bit easy for me to understand what I want to do. Like storytelling, I just converted that thing to my process. So for me, it's a little bit easy for me to produce visuals through storytelling.
Right. But while asking this question, also the point through which I wanted to kind of give that provocation to you also,
Mm.
Amjum, that if you could
Uh,
talk about the motives, images, and the kind
mm,
of visuals you use,
mm,
and there's
mm,
a very
mm,
specific way of telling a story or forming a narrative in your work, right?
mm,
And
mm.
that, if you could talk a little bit more about the images and visuals you refer to, and also that these traditional practices also you very diligently refer to, if you could
Yeah.
talk about that a bit.
Uh, In very recently, in very recent works, I use different kinds of images, like miniature and all. I'm not. It's not about. It's not like that. I'm taking that image, and I'm trying to tackle that in a contemporary space. It's I'm taking back to the time, or I'm taking back to the era of process or method or image. So it's not only an image I'm trying to say it's about a time of an era also. So
Right.
and I'm placing that in a very contemporary situation. So if you're looking to my work, you can enter like that only. It's not about taking it cut and paste of a uh, image. It's a very close to our contemporary, maybe political space or socio-political space. It's you can enter it like that. So it's that's my answer for that question. Is using that uh, images from Persian miniature or something like that.
Yeah. So we have few questions also with us, but I would request everyone to also raise their questions if they have to Amjum, if they
Uh,
want to ask something to Amjum as well. But we have a question from Yogita here. How
uh.
do you overcome your creative block?
you know, I always said to my friends, it's for me, it's some kind of a problem solving, technically and philosophically. Why? Because I am entering a work. I'll try to, if I have a problem, I want to solve that into the next work. So I don't feel any that kind of blocks. But in early times, I feel that kind of things. But I I overcome like that. It's some kind of problem solving is also happening in my process and thought.
Right.
So I don't have that kind of blocks, but in some technical areas I have little bit. So I overcome that space with my other art uh, uh, forms like music or dance or something like that.
Right. Great. We can wait for some more questions, maybe, if we get from the audience.
Yeah. You can, I think you can also observe my work. I use some specific images over and over. Why? Because I want to resolve that images and resolve that composition again and again. I want to overcome that. No. If I have a problem in that composition, I want to solve in next work. So that's the condition for myself as a artist. So for my process. So it's very interesting for me uh, to do again and again to resolve that. No?
Great. I'm just waiting also. Yeah, there is one question also we have received, Amjum, for you. What about miniature paintings draws you, and how does that reflect in your artistic practice? What do you have to say about it?
In miniature process, there is a very keen some kind of spiritual process is happening in miniature paintings. You know, so it's for me that's an answer for me in my earlier works to present works. That also helped me to get more on my process. You know, so it helps me to understand the technical, maybe like the composition making or different kinds of things like that. So it's very close to my subjective process too. To a very I am using some kind of images like very uh, maybe I sell myself my very politically or very subjectively. So through the entire process, the miniature and Persian images or Persian process, that process is also a part of my journey. You know, I understanding their process on like that way. So it helps me to understand my process to overcome that kind of things. You know,
Yeah,
so
absolutely. You know what is very interesting about it? The way
yeah,
you use these references, but also you
yeah,
have a very serious political and cultural stand over the subject matters you engage with,
yeah, yeah,
right? So,
yeah,
however you refer to this kind of, Islamic or miniature traditional works or histories, you also
yeah,
refer to them in a manner where you engage with the subject with a very contemporary
yeah,
outlook,
yeah,
right? And your
yeah,
subjectivity, your
yeah.
positioning in that entire kind of a space, how do you see yourself in negotiating these kind of parallel histories are also quite interesting for me
Yeah,
always.
yeah, definitely, definitely, definitely. And and you know, it's a part of my personal journey too. My personal life journey is also a part of that kind of atmosphere. You know, since
Right.
my childhood, I entered that kind of stories, that kind of designs, that kind of atmosphere, that kind of smell. You know, it's so important for myself. You know, understanding that kind of process.
I also would like to highlight one more thing here. Since you brought in this atmospheric
Mm,
understanding, this
mm,
is very important. What you are doing with beads or what you are doing with your sculptural practice, and
mm.
the way you have that painterly sensibility as a background as
Mm,
well. So
yeah,
that I really want to know what that transition is from where you bring that painterly understanding to a very precise understanding of how you develop these new body of works, what we see, which often comes under this idea of precision and how you precisely kind of,
mm,
thoroughly understand what has to be done and you do.
mm,
But the painterly understanding and this atmospheric understanding has to do with something
mm,
else
mm,
completely. So,
yeah,
how do you deal with this?
yeah. Uh, you know that if I already mentioned I spend most of the time in that kind of atmosphere already. Kind of dargah. Even it's Islamic calligraphy is one of the best example. You know, there is if you have observed, there is a green patch and yellow color calligraphy and red color border on it. So you know there is an opposite blend is happening in that traditional design culture. You know, so I think it's interesting for me to attain that idea. You know, that opposite. You know, as an artist, it's very important to to that for my process, or to bring that kind of experimental things, opposite color blend and
Right.
other kind of process, very keen process, very minute process. So it helps me to understand the situation, what I am doing right now at present. So at the same time, I am aware about all those things what I am saved here. So that collaboration of all those things happened in that single canvas. That's an interesting thing. That's why because it's my landscape is little bit magical. You know.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. So adding to that, I guess we have one more question from Premjish only. That in terms of translating textual and oral narratives to a two-dimensional or a sculptural form, what
Hmm.
are the challenges you face? How do you edit or decide what to add and remove to make it accessible? What you have to say about it?
No, the first thing is I have no correct drawing plan, even single work. You know, it's coming out daily. If I am enter a landscape, what I'm doing, what I'm doing in a month, which kind of thought process are in my mind through that time, it will affect in my process. You know, maybe that's an political space, that's an in every manner. So in the case of a sculpture, I always said the sculpture, I can't I produce very few sculptures, but I can't paint that image to my 2D space. That's why I'm going to the sculpture. I just want to produce sculpture only. So that's an answer for that. So why? Because I'm just taking whole process like that, second by second. It's coming out and it's gone. It's coming out and it's gone. That kind of process is happening. So after all that, I paint. If I finish the paint with that if I continuously done a month a painting, which kind of thought process, uh, through thought process uh, I engage, the whole sense of that thought will come to a single canvas. That's happening actually. So that's why I am just last question I mentioned. I am just a little bit magical happen for that.
Right,
No.
right. So we have one more question, Amjum. In addition to that, from Sanjay, the audience, the question is: there are strong Sufi references elements in your works. How
Hmm.
did you decide to make it an the strong and highlighted part of your visual vocabulary?
Hmm.
Over to you.
Yeah. Uh, you know that image, that Sophie image comes from not only from this my very childhood onwards. I'm using that kind of images. So why? Because that the answer is inside that question also, only. Why? Because that's my present condition, that's my present mood, that's my present situation, to early works to that Sufi. I am practicing different kinds of sophistic approaches, and I love to practice that kind of sophistic approaches through my works, right now through my works. So it's little bit spiritual also, means you're taking time to understand that process, and that's the Sufism always said like that. Different kinds of Sufism are there, but the core of the Sufism is, the idea is to understand yourself, what you are going through in whole manner. So I already mentioned my early works very 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 rough. So my character is also very rough in that time. So right now I don't think so myself. No, it's helped me to wash out myself. No, so yeah, that's the interesting thing about using that sophistic figure and all.
Right. 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 So I guess we are also running out of time, and we had a wonderful conversation. But before ending this conversation, I also would like to ask you that what is next, and what are you working on? What are when we can see your new body of works, and where?
Yeah, and I think my one solo is coming in the this year and maybe very soon. I think maybe. So I'm doing some small scale sculptures and some paintings are going on. Paintings, maybe oil paintings are on progress right now. Some mixed media works is also coming. So I think that solo is an extraction of what I made last 2 3 years.
Right.
Yeah,
Great. Thank you, Amjum, for your time and agreeing to this conversation, agreeing to be part of this program. And I really thank all the audiences which we have right now. And we hope to see you in our coming editions where we will have more and more such artist conversations with the artists and to forge a meaningful dialogue and to understand their practice a little more, perhaps.
yeah.
Thank you all again. And thank you, Amjum. Cheers.
Thank you, Sibdas, and thank you, Sibdas.